Hey y'all, the third episode of What If dropped today, and oh my gosh, this show has boldness that I haven't seen in the MCU since Endgame. I know that is like a little bit dramatic of a comparison, and I'm not trying to insult any of the other movies, and I mean, you know, we all saw the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer this week. That's pretty daring. But this episode of What If, I'll say it, it's my favorite thus far. I keep saying this each week, and I think I might keep saying it for a while because the show continues to outdo itself. This episode is titled What If Earth Lost Its Mightiest Heroes. In the premise of this episode, there is a serial killer hunting down each of the 6 OG Avengers: Thor, Tony Stark, Clint Barton, Natasha Romanoff, Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers, Captain Carter. They're kind of out of the picture, but I thought this episode was phenomenal for one reason, and one reason primarily. The events that this episode of What If deal with are very, very specifically focused within Phase 1. At that point in time, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was kind of small. It was dealing with very ground level things. Thor was the most out there thing possible. Pretty much the only Earth side things that we've kind of dealt with at this point have been Tony Stark, at least in the present day. We obviously have the first Avenger in Phase 1, but that's 1940s and everything seems a little detached even from there. But nowadays, when we're talking about looking at the MCU from a Phase 4 standpoint, we have a lot of like ground level Earth things going on that just didn't exist back then. What I think is so great about this episode of What If is it is able to bring in elements that we have now in Phase 4 and reapply them to a Phase 1 world in an alternate reality that makes it feel as whole of a universe as now. Like, this episode still would have been interesting of, killing off all the Avengers if we only had the tools in Phase 1 that we had dealing with all of those. I mean, I really liked getting to see each of the 6 Avengers and revisit these movies in different places in different ways, but adding in the element of Hank Pym is something that takes this episode kind of above and beyond what the other two have been able to do, just because they've been a little bit solidified in and of themselves, whereas this draws from a lot. I said last week that this series feels like kind of a creative sandbox where all of the writers and creators have kind of just pulled references, potential plot lines, older comic storylines, and kind of jumbled them all together to create something really unique with the series. And while I still think that's true, this episode shows the design of what they're trying to do. It shows that they are really looking at every single possibility of who to bring into certain episodes. Michael Douglas returns as an evil version of Hank Pym that is trying to hunt down the Avengers following Hope, his daughter's death. And this seems like a pre-Scott Lang world, so I don't know if he'll play into this at all. But what I think was really interesting is there's so much in this episode that at the time, the late 2000s, 2008 to 2010 or 11 when Thor came out, there were things we didn't know, i.e., we didn't know that Clint had a wife and a family. We didn't know that Loki was going to try to take over all of Midgard or Earth. We didn't know about anything Hank Pym-wise or his history of being the Ant-Man unless you had read the comics. As far as the MCU was concerned, that was not on anyone's radar. Additionally, Captain Marvel and the signal beamer 90s beeper thing that Fury keeps in his truck. There's a reference to that. I think that is so awesome that the series is able to pull off those elements and acknowledge that even though there's been a little bit of retconning in the Sacred Timeline live action version of the MCU, here they're acknowledging that all of these things do exist at the correct point in time that they should have, or that's been referenced in the live action version of the MCU. Additionally, this episode just is maybe the most visually stunning of them all, and I hate to say that because the other two have been fantastic as well. But all of the stills when they're showing new areas that they're going to, new locations, kind of switching between movies and referencing those sort of things, seeing the Watcher in the sky, kind of gives you chills. It's so good. And I yet again ask, please Marvel, release a What If like animation concept art book for this series because I need it. I will buy it. It doesn't matter what it costs. Like, I want it. There are so many like visual callbacks and attentions to detail. For example, Coulson goes with Nick Fury to a coffee shop and they are kind of meeting at night by blinds and they're just sort of talking about what their next options are. There is actually a short film or a one act where Coulson does this with another SHIELD agent who ends up being a Hydra agent. That was an excellent like visual callback to kind of now what is a hard to access reference to older MCU. Coulson was kind of used back in the day as a tie between all the movies. I love getting to see him come back here, have references to those things, like reorganize their importance in the larger like fandom or canon of the MCU. We could not have asked for a better Hulk than Mark Ruffalo, in my opinion, and so getting to see him actually have opportunities to return to this character, voice the character, be in that Hulk origin story that he didn't get in the MCU is just really, really awesome. Last but not least, I think what this episode is doing excellently that the other two, being kind of more closed storylines, weren't necessarily able to accomplish, or I wasn't sure exactly how it would manifest itself, is seeing in this episode what if is leading towards. I know in the MCU we're always talking about like what's the next big thing, and I hate that sometimes that overshadows the creativity and work that goes into a singular project. However, this episode of What If brilliantly sets up the future episodes, namely the zombie episode, because I know there is a Funko Pop out there, and this might be a minor spoiler for people, of a post-apocalyptic Natasha. I believe she's gonna return in the zombies episode because we don't necessarily get full confirmation of her death. Yes, we see a coffin with the Black Widow ledger on top of it. However, the fact that that Funko Pop exists, and I know there's going to be a zombie episode later on, I feel like that's going to come back into play. But I am loving What If for all of the reasons I've just listed, just the creativity, the fun each week, but the actual serious storytelling that is going on here and the creativity at hand. I think it's refreshing the MCU in a way that I didn't think possible, and also leading me to believe that Phase 4, and especially what we've seen in the No Way Home trailer, Marvel is just getting bolder and crazier and just saying, you know what, we did it once, we accomplished this, that will never go away. Let's try to do some other crazy stuff, and I'm so looking forward to it. What did you guys think of this week's What If episode? Let me know down below which What If episode has been your favorite thus far. For me, it's definitely this one, but I can't say that I'll feel that way next week because they continue to outdo themselves. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed my review, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you never miss a video from me, and have an absolutely amazing day. See y'all in my next video.